Oh, I see. Yeah, she would need to be that old. Okay. Yeah,
Right.
I'm okay. Yeah.
We keep coming up with new ideas for our book, and some of those ideas we accept, some of them we reject, and some of them we table for later. And in today's spoiler video, we're going to discuss 4 of our recent ideas and what we've decided to do with them.
Let's see. Did you say the first one was the iteration?
Yes, that was
Okay.
your idea, yes.
So one of the ideas that I had, and again, this is a spoiler video, so if you don't want to hear spoilers, skip and or watch the next one. But the idea here is that the scientists, we've talked about the idea, scientists created genetically modified human beings and sent them back in time. And so far, we've been imagining that they created a whole batch of them and sent them all back and are just waiting to see, which ones they can reconnect with. And I thought this week that it might have made more sense for them to actually create them in pairs, where they have one particular genetic modification, send them back, and then find the one who aged and is now in their 30s. And then if they got the modifications they wanted, then they would be able to do something. But if they didn't, then they would pull forward the one who was in adolescence so that they could study what happened at this point in time and be able to learn something to make iterations on the next one. So I'm thinking that possibly Vanessa and Arnold are different iterations, and I don't know which one of them would come first or what other implications of that.
And that would also mean, this is something I just now thought about, we've talked about Vanessa and Ty being siblings. They would probably be the same iteration.
That's exactly who I was thinking.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's something that we still need to figure out how exactly it would fit into our book and the storyline. But it is something that provides more opportunity to possibly fill in a few plot holes, make things a little bit easier for us, but also provide something that when Vanessa and Arnold are pulled to the future, they find out that there's a little bit more to what's going on than they originally expected.
Yeah, they're finding a whole bunch of other people who were older, different iterations that are now showing up. So it's no longer everybody's the same. So why is one of them special? They're all different now.
So that's one of our ideas that we've kind of tabled. We haven't fully accepted it yet, but we think there's some potential there. Another idea was that this genetic modification is something that will only present itself at adolescence. And there's a couple reasons why the scientists would want to do this. One of them would be to allow these kids to have at least somewhat of a normal childhood without all this stuff interrupting all the major formative years of their life. But also, when you look into kind of the biological side of it, timing this to occur at adolescence would actually be one of the least difficult things to do, just because there's so much else going on with the body and so many other signaling things that are going on. To kind of have this modification hitchhike onto any of the number of other changes that are happening wouldn't be too difficult when you compare it to the idea of genetically modifying an entirely new ability.
And from a storytelling standpoint, one of the reasons that this is helpful for me, I think, is that in trying to come up with Vanessa's backstory, it can be that the onset of these abilities and these symptoms, if you call it, was probably what triggered some of the contention that created conflict in her previous foster role, and just her dealing with not just adolescence in general, but also, and I'm also different, and I've got this thing that nobody else believes that I have that can trigger why is she moving to a new foster.
So that idea, I think we have pretty much accepted.
Mhm.
I think our next one is one that we rejected, and rejected after not a whole
And it was
lot.
mine.
Rejected after not a whole lot of discussion, and that was the idea of Robin, who is Vanessa's caseworker, also being a GMH and being in cahoots with the Fringe.
and it would have been helpful from a storytelling standpoint, just because, ooh, yay, another plot twist that we can throw in later on. But also, it gives a vehicle to that we can we could have used Robin to help steer Vanessa's thinking to be more ready to accept what the Fringe is trying to get her to do, and to enable or look the other way, or make the connection for the conversation between Vanessa and the Fringe. But no sooner had I presented the idea that you told me why it wouldn't work.
Because Robin needs to be at least 20 or so years older than Vanessa.
Not older than. Basically, be at least 20 years old.
Yes, at least 20 years old when Vanessa comes back as a baby. So 20 years older than Vanessa.
Oh, I see. Yeah, she would need to be that old. Okay. Yeah,
right.
I'm okay. Yeah, my timeline was messed up.
So she needs to be a good bit older than Vanessa, which means that if she were a GMH, she would have had to have been sent back even further, which, why would the Fringe do that? Or maybe they're sending her back specifically to look after Vanessa. Well, then why don't any of the other GMHs get that? Why send back one person whose sole job is that? Just a lot that doesn't quite fit in.
Yeah. Created more plot holes than it filled.
Right. And then our last idea was it kind of came from my scene work that I have been doing. I had written the first scene and I was moving on to the second scene, and somewhere in between there came some plot inconsistencies where in the second scene, Arnold is talking to Reese and he mentions how Vanessa grabbed his arm or something like that and communicated to him via touch, even though that never happened in the first scene that I wrote. So I was looking back, okay, so do we want this to happen now? Is this something that happens later on after the conversation? Where do we put this? And the conclusion that we came to was we want this communication via touch to be introduced as soon as reasonably possible, because it is the central part of the story. And if we have that in the opening scene, it is something that really builds the intrigue of what exactly is going on, what's going to come next.
And that was something that just made it obvious to me. Yes, we do need that in the opening scene.
So those are 4 of the ideas that we've come up with recently, and whether we've decided to keep, reject, or table them. But in the interest of that last idea there of having the central part of the story, that central plot element, be presented in the first scene, what is an example of a story in which the central plot element is introduced in the first scene, whether it's a book or a movie? Let us know in the comments, and we will see you next week.